that was a
No, I love you. You're beautiful. You're beautiful. Anyways. She did what in an accident? She had an accident. You didn't go TT on you? What did you say? You don't have a cool accent? What does it matter when you're sucking dick? Nobody listens to you anyway. Nobody's going, wow, you got a really great accent.
That's a great accent, if you ask me. What's going on, everybody? Welcome on into the Check Your Brain podcast here. My name is Tony Mazur. Thank you, everybody, for checking out the podcast. And if you're on Patreon, thank you for subscribing. If you're interested in more content, go to patreon.com/Tony Mazur. You get $3 a month. You get unlimited amount of podcasts with audio only. $5 gets you video and audio, and then $10 gets you extra content. And early access to guests, such as my guest today, which is Christy Miller. She has a new album coming out called Brutally Yours, or is it out now, actually?
It's out now. Yes. March 24th. It came out.
Okay, perfect. Yes, there she is. If you're watching on the video on YouTube and Rumble there, and she's my guest today. Christy, it's great to talk to you here.
No, thanks for having me, Tony. I appreciate it.
But first things first, before I get into talking about comedy, fitness, all that, I got to ask you about another album that you appeared on. I have to ask you about this.
Yes, my infamous Andrew Dice Clay cover.
So for folks who aren't watching right now or listening on the podcast, Andrew Dice Clay back in 2000, this was kind of his comeback album because he did the, he was the Dice Man back in the late 80s, early 90s. Then he did that weird, this one's for the ladies and I'm going to sing, I'm going to do Elvis.
It was Valentine's Day. Yeah. And then,
then he decided by the end of the 90s, I'm going to go back to being the Dice Man again. So he came out with this CD called Face Down, Ass Up. And you happen to be one of the ladies on this album right now.
I am. I'm the black girl in the middle. Good night. No, I'm the fat bitch on the right with the pale skin.
Well, but you're not obviously not fat, but it's one of those classics. It's like, you got the tan girl, you got the black girl, and then you got the lighter skinned white girl, but everybody,
Yeah.
It's
okay.
How did you get into it? Talk about that.
Okay. Andrew and I have been friends for, I've been in stand-up for 27 years and I've known him since the day I started. And he's like family to me. So back in the day when he was doing this album and this tour, he calls my house. And this is back when we had landlines. You kids don't know what a landline is. Okay. Go fuck yourselves. And, and I get home from the gym and I check my voicemail. You got to dial into the voicemail and I hear, Christy, it's Dice. Call me back. So I'm like, oh, what do you want, you fucking asshole? So I call him back. I go, what's up? He goes, not even, hey, how are you, girl? What's happening? Nothing. How do you feel about showing your ass? I go, to who? On the cover. I'm supposed to know. I go, I don't know. I go, it looks good for a girl, I guess. I don't know. What do you think? He goes, you're doing it. I want you on the cover. So I did. So he goes, where should we shoot it? And I said, well, I currently had a show at this club on Sunset Boulevard called the Cat Club. I did Wednesday nights there. It was Christy Miller. It was a 1-woman wrecking crew and her 2 male bitches. And my 2 male bitches were Sam Tripoli and CVD. And we did shows there all the time. So they were, I'm dating myself here. So
was this coked up Sam?
Oh no, this was cool, Sam. This was before he went crazy in tinfoil. This was fun, Sam. He just cut his hair off. He had really long hair when I first met him.
This was when he got in the Comedy Store when Mitzi Shore got him on just because he's Armenian. You're kind of a minority.
Oh, I don't have any Armenians. You're good, So, oh, good. He's Armenian night here. I'm race, whatever. So we do the show. So who owned the Cat Club was this guy, Jimmy, this mob guy, and Slim Jim from the Stray Cats. And Slim, it was all like Leopard, really cool club. It was such a cool spot. I did Wednesdays there. They had a jam session Thursdays with like the guys from Guns N' Roses, LA Guns, you know, you name it. They were all hanging out there, jam and Stray Cats. They had jam sessions. It was the funnest club. So Dice goes, where should we do it? I want a place that's really cool and kind of, you know, hip and stuff. I said, well, you know, Slim Jim Phantom has the Cat Club. He goes, I know Slim. And I said, of course you do, you fucking prick. So I go over to Slim and I call him up and I'm like, hey, Dice wants to shoot his album cover. And I thought this would be a good spot for it. He goes, oh yeah, come in the daytime. I'm just here doing the bookkeeping. He goes, my kids play soccer with his kids. It's fine. Dice, I'll do anything for him. So that's how we set it up. So with that white backdrop was like that white paper that was on the stage, and behind it was like really cool, like leopard and stuff. And if you look at the inside of the cover of all those, two girls are porn stars. And then me. So the girl on the left, the white girl on the left is Christy Swanson. She was a big porn star back then. The girl in the middle,
her. Yeah.
Yeah. And the girl in the middle, that's Midori.
Okay.
And Midori, for those of you who don't know, she was Jody Watley's sister. Remember Jody Watley?
Yes.
From the 90s. So I was calling her Jody Twatley all day and she was dying. So, and the funny thing is Dice, he's such a gentleman and he's such like a close friend. And I love him. He's like, you're not doing any of the dirty shit. I'm only making the hooas do it. You're my friend. You're classy. And I go, am I really? And bitch. So in between takes, he would stand in front of me and open up his coat and wouldn't let anybody look at me. I go, Dice, it's okay. It's nobody's looking. Everybody's working. This isn't that kind of shoot. You know, we're laughing. So that's how the album cover came out. And last year I was in Florida with him doing shows and he surprised me with a bunch of old face down, ass up concert shirts that he had when he went on tour.
Oh,
I didn't even know those existed. So now I have a bunch of those.
Now, I saw Dice a couple of years ago and you know, like I said, he went through his ups and downs in his career, but he is really latched onto this like grandpa. Like he's, it's
Dice
I don't know what
is
don't
one
know
of the
what I'm doing.
hardest
I got a smartphone, and I'm like, he's going up to random people, going like, another person with a picture. You want to take a picture with me?
Yeah, are you the one who wanted the picture? But Dice is the king of pranks. This guy, as long as I've known him, constantly pranking people before smartphones, before any of this shit. He would prank the shit out of people constantly. And it's hilarious to watch him like fans with like, cause when Dice was down in the quiet, like after he did the Valentine's Day, cause he was trying to redeem himself because he's like one of the first comics that really got canceled. You know, the gay community came after him for all his gay jokes and they tried to shut him down and Hollywood really shut down on him.
Yeah. MTV, Laura Dunn, all that.
Everybody shut down on him. And he's like the nicest guy in the world. He would give you he's just and one of the hardest working comics I've ever worked with in my life. And it hurt him. So he would come to the Comedy Store every night. This is when I first got there back in 95. And I would see him every night working and we got really close. And I'm like watching this man do an hour in front of like two people. It's during the comedy drop when nobody went to clubs anymore. Yeah. Dice is so committed. He would stare at this piece of the wall in the back of the original room at the Comedy Store and just commit to the joke and no reaction. I'm in the back crying, like doubled over because it's hysterical because there's nobody there and he's committed. He's such a pro. But like going on the road with him now, we did the Palsy shows like a year and a half ago for his documentary. And then we did some other shows last year that Eleanor couldn't be a part of. So I'm the side chick, basically. You know, Eleanor Kerrigan's his main opener, and I'm the side chick. So, which is fine. And but watching him, he goes, remember back in the day, I was like such a cartoon character. I go, well, you still are, but you kind of, after 45 years, you've kind of grown into yourself. Like you caught up to your act because you had this big act when you were starting out and you took 45 years to grow into that act. Now you're 45 years in. So your act is a 45-year-old man, but it's cool to watch you be Andrew Dice Clay as opposed to the Dice Man. And it's so hilarious. I think he's brilliant. I love him. I think he's as funny as fuck. And it's just, he's just an amazing human.
Him going to random gyms with Eleanor Kerrigan, just annoying her. It's fantastic.
It's so funny. Yeah. He's the king. He comes up with shit I'm like, really? He'll call me at like 2 a.m. What do you think of this? And I'm like, you're retarded. And then it becomes like the biggest thing. And I'm like, why do I even question him? I just go, yeah, that's hysterical, because I know anything he comes up with is going to be big. And everybody's catching on to the picture thing.
I've
Everybody.
talked to Florentine about this,
Uh-huh.
and there's the classic story, and I know you know this, where
Mhm.
Florentine and Jim Norton went out to the Comedy Store. They went out to do some, in the '90s, trying to get development deals and everything.
Yep.
That
I
development
remember
deal
when they were
season.
there. Yep.
And so they go to the Comedy Store. For folks who don't know the story, uh, obviously Jim and Jim, they went up as Jim and Jim. They were huge
Yes, they
fans
did.
of not only Dice, but Dice's album, The Day the Laughter Died.
Greatest. I told Andrew, I go, it's the greatest comedy album ever recorded. He goes, why? I go, because you bombed for 2 hours and you committed to bombing. You just did the Garden. Dice rules. You sold out the Garden. You're the biggest thing in stand-up. Now you're at Dangerfields with like 22 people bombing. And it's the greatest thing I ever heard. And it shows how humble you are. And that vulnerable side to you, that you could go up and bomb and release a hit record with it.
But it was a Rick Rubin album too.
Yes, it was. Yep.
And he puts that out of an album of him bombing. I mean, like you said, he's at the Garden. He goes to Dangerfields when all of the Dice fans are over at the Garden. They're like, yeah, all right, we'll go home. We'll hit the bars and everything in Manhattan. Instead, he goes over to Dangerfields, bombs, puts out an album, puts out a second album too.
Uh-huh.
But if you were a true comic, you knew these jokes that he was saying. And
I was screaming when I listened to it. Oh,
it's the ultimate comic album.
yep.
And so I guess Florentine and Norton were there at the Comedy Store. They run into Dice. They're like, we're huge fans. We know The Day the Laughter Died. We're like cover to cover in the album. So he's like, oh yeah, why don't you go up and do that? So they go up on stage doing Dice's jokes from that album. And of course they bomb. Only person on stage or only person in the audience.
Dice is crying. Yeah, he's dying laughing in the back. Yeah, I remember when they came out. It was so hilarious. But yeah, it's just, and then Jimmy ended up opening for him on the Face Down Ass Up tour.
Yep.
And that's when I met Jim Norton. Was we had the record release party, and Jim Norton opened for him, and that was a fun night.
So you had you were doing your shows out on the Strip. So I guess how did you get into comedy? I know it sounds like a hacky question, but you were out in LA and you came back to New York. Like, how'd this journey go with comedy?
I was born and raised in California, so I'm from the Bay Area, and I moved to LA with my best friend, and we were getting into acting. And I've wanted to do stand-up since I was about 7 years old. Like when Showtime came out, it was a primetime channel, and then HBO came out a couple years later as like they showed comedy specials and movies, and it was all prime time shit. So I would watch
Robert Klein. It was like Robert Klein and of course Rodney by the mid 80s.
Exactly. And that was when Rodney's special came out, that's when I first saw Dice. And I was a kid. I was like 11 years old. And whatchamacallit. So I would watch these, like I'd watch the San Francisco Big Laugh Off. It was I'll never forget, it was Marshall Warfield,
Yep.
Ollie Joe Prater, Johnny Dark, and the Reverend George Wallace. And when I saw Marshall Warfield and George Wallace, I died. And I was probably about 7 years old. And I'm like, I want to do that. And everybody always told me I was funny. And I just like, yeah, that comedy's for people, special people. I'm not a special person. So I get to LA, and I'm working on Strange Days, that movie. I did some light stunt work for about 5-6 months on there. And then my best friend goes, we wrap the movie, and she goes, if you don't go to the fucking Comedy Store and go do an open mic, I'm going to set you on fire. Because through the whole movie, I was making everybody laugh. I was making, the director, Catherine Bigelow, all those guys, making people laugh and just being a clown. So I said, all right, I'll make you a deal, because I was scared. I said, I will go to the Comedy Store and apply for a job as a cocktail waitress. If I get the job, that means I'm supposed to be in that building, and I'm supposed to do stand-up and learn the craft and do open mics and grow from there. If I don't get the job, that's God telling me, the universe telling me, it's not for you. Go another direction. Of course, I walk in, within 30 seconds, I had the job.
Of course.
And me and the day manager was a gay bear. We were kikiing for about 3 hours. I met Pauly Shore came in. I met him and his assistant, Bobby Ludington, met his dog. And then Mitzi came in later. So I'm meeting all these people, and I just got hired. So that's, I started waitressing and said, okay, I'm here now. Now I got to put up or shut up. So I did. So I worked on my little 3 minutes. And then like 2.5, 3 months later, I got on stage when I thought it was perfect. And they dragged me on stage.
The late night stuff. Like by the time, you get to about 12:50 in the morning, she put you on.
Yeah. When I got passed as a paid regular at the end of 99, the beginning of 2000, because I spent like 4 years working, and I worked with Paul Mooney a lot. And Dice took me under his wing back then. And Paul Mooney really pushed me, and the legend.
Oh, yeah.
And so I finally, Mitzi already loved me at this point. And at this point, waitresses weren't allowed to talk to comics because her husband ran off with a cocktail waitress to Las Vegas and they divorced.
Oh, yeah.
So,
well, but she got the Comedy Store in the divorce.
She got the good deal. She got the good deal. She got the better end of the deal. He got a whore and she got a fucking she got an empire. So God, Mitzi Shore, you're a queen, honey. So we weren't allowed. So when Mitzi came in, you weren't allowed to talk to comics. You had to keep your head down and just take orders and just, shut your mouth, because waitresses were trash to her. So I'm sneaking around on the potluck nights and the belly room shows and trying to sneak around to do stand up, and all that, like Scott Day, the talent coordinator, would hide me on the lists, and Mike Becker, her vice president, would, they would all try to protect me and keep me out of her hair. And then one day they accidentally gave her the lineup for the employee comics to go on Sundays, and she saw my name. And at this point, she was already in love with me. I was doing every job in that fucking Comedy Store: phones, accounting, assistant talent booker, waitressing, cover booth. I did it all. So she loved me. I was her all around girl. That's what she used to call me. So she saw my name and they panicked. Like, she goes, Christy's a performer. And they're like, oh, fuck, she's going to get fired. Oh, that's great. Oh, I love this. And they were like, ooh. So, I know people watch the Comedy Store documentary, but that's one part which I wish Mike Bonder would have like called, because I was really the first waitress to really break that barrier between the stage and waitressing.
Yeah,
and
like
then everybody followed.
The improv used to do that a little bit more, but not the Comedy Store.
Comedy Store was unhurt because of what happened, because Mitzi was too bitter.
Mm-hmm.
And after that, then it got easier. And then I was able to go on anywhere. Then I showcased, and she was so proud of me that I worked so hard and was able to showcase, crush. And then she started giving me spots, but I asked her for the death spots. I loved the Kinnison spot at midnight.
Yep.
I loved going on, like the headliner would go on at 10. So it'd be like Carlos Mencia, Joe Rogan, Dom Irrera, Dice, whoever was in town, Eddie Griffin. If it was Eddie Griffin, you would never get on stage because he doesn't get off stage.
Yeah, exactly.
He's probably still on there now from 1996. So, so I would ask Mitzi, give me the death spot because I want to be better. So I would follow Rogan after he dry humped the stool for an hour and a half. I would follow Carlos Mencia after going, fuck, for an hour and a half. Or Dom Irrera.
Swallowing the microphone.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And fuck, and it's just like, and I was like, I wanted those spots because that was like when they watched him, they do an hour and a half. Then the crowd would get up to leave after they were done. And that's when I would go on. And I wanted to be able to handle that and get stronger. And that's how I got really strong. And I was grateful for those spots because I wanted the death. I didn't want it easy. So yeah, that's that.
Yep. I've been in the Comedy Store a few times, and I've seen Judah Friedlander, I've seen Brad Williams, a bunch of others who do the death spot when there's two people in there. There's two people left in the OR, and he kills. Because it's just crowd work at that point, and it makes you a better comic. It's like, it's one thing if you're Argus Hamilton who goes up at 8:15.
Good to see you. Good old Argus. That I loved late nights at the Comedy Store, and when there was only like one or two people in there, I would have so much fun because that's where the magic happens. And and that's how you could tell where a comic is in their career. Is a lot of these new jacks or these young guys will get intimidated by empty chairs. They don't focus on the one person sitting there ready to laugh. They're focusing on the other 150 empty chairs that are in the room, and they get all defeated and shit and start talking shit about the room. And I'm like, well, bitch, if you had a better name and drew a crowd, then you'd have people to talk to, you fucking loser. And
Mhm.
I've gone on after them and just destroyed the comic and just made them feel bad about themselves.
That's what's great about it. And especially like you were talking about, you were there at the beginning during the lean years. So you
Mhm.
started seeing when the Comedy Store and the comedy scene in LA was starting to come back again.
Yeah.
So you saw it firsthand from being because you talk to so many of the comics from the 80s and they talk about the boom, and everywhere you
Right.
go they either got paid in green or white and
Yep.
everything. And
Uh-huh.
so you basically got your start during the lean years,
Yep.
and then you saw the rise. So that's kind of an
Mhm.
interesting perspective.
Yeah. It's I'm really, I mean, of course, my tenure at the Comedy Store, those 10 years I was there, was the dry years, was the lean years, the dark time. And of
But
course
somebody
I
had to be there.
yeah, exactly. And I missed I was too young to be in the 80s boom, and I left when the 2010 boom hit, like the 08,
The
09.
Rogan, Joey Diaz, all them.
No, Rogan and Diaz were there when I was there. Joey Diaz got there a couple years after I did, and I remember when he first got. Joey Diaz is probably one of my favorite human beings in the world, and he's probably the coolest guy, the greatest storyteller on earth. And Uncle Joey, that's my heart. He owns my heart. I love that man. But it was so fun because we really stuck together as comics. Like that was our home. Even if you didn't have a spot that night, you still went to the Comedy Store. And it wasn't like it is here in New York where it's like, ew, you don't have a spot, you're just hanging out, you're a loser. Ew, like ew. And it's just like gross, go fuck yourself.
Well,
And
Mitzi treated it as kind of a college. That
yeah.
was at the beginning for when
Mhm.
people, if they want to go back in history, they want to talk about the where there was a big strike in the late 70s, early 80s with
Mhm.
guys like Leno and Letterman
Yep.
that Mitzi considered. I mean, except for like maybe a Jackie Mason, or if Richard Pryor was going to perform at the Comedy Store, they didn't pay comics in those days.
No.
And she considered it like, this is a college. You're trying to get you to graduate so you perform. And
Mhm.
obviously the
It was
merits
a
of that,
showcase club. That's what
yeah.
she considered it. You're showcasing for Hollywood in my club.
Mhm.
And it's like, yeah, but you should still be paid. And the strike
Exactly.
happened and people
Steve
jumped.
Lubetkin, with here, classic name, Steve Lubetkin,
Yep.
jumped off of the
Jumped off
Hilton
the
that was next door to it into the
it's the
parking lot.
It was the Hyatt.
Hyatt, yeah, that was it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. He jumped out at the window and killed himself. And I'm like, for $15 spot. All right. I've
Yeah,
seen
sure, why
worse.
not?
Why not? Do it, boo. But Mitzi, we used to call her the godmother because Mitzi, like I would see her pass people and go, what are you doing? They're terrible. But she saw something, and I never questioned her, even though I would question her, but I would never question Mitzi because there was always, I knew if she saw something that I didn't see in somebody, and not like it mattered if I saw it, but it was just, I'm like, all right, Mitzi knows something because she had a sixth sense about it. There's never, ever, ever going to be another Mitzi Shore, ever.
Was there anyone in particular that you saw on a stage, you're like, what, why is he or she on a stage, but Mitzi passed them, or Mitzi let them, and then they eventually became like an A-list comic?
I can name you a name right now. Sebastian Maniscalco.
Mm.
I was like, he's terrible. He sucks so bad he sells out the Garden every time he plays. Okay, my bad. Pardon me. But I thought he was terrible. I still don't think he's funny. I get why he's so big. He's got a
Mhm.
niche. He has that Italian community niche, and that's fucking awesome. And he's making millions of dollars. Fucking good for you, Sebastian. I'm proud of you because I really thought, I was like, Sebastian, because she passed all the Italians at one point when The Sopranos was big. She passed everybody Italian because she wanted that Italian roster. So if Hollywood came knocking on her door looking for Italian comics, oh, these are my guys, and she stockpiled them. Some of them
Yep.
disappeared and never came back, and some became huge, but Sebastian was one of those comics. I'm like, I don't see it. But, I was young at the time too. I was in my 20s. So
Mhm.
what did I know? I'm in my 50s now. So, when I look back now, I see what she saw because I'm a lot more mature, a lot wiser. I have the reps under my belt. So, but back then I was like, Sebastian, oh, he's terrible.
I kind of felt the same thing too until I saw him there. I was in the main room and it was like, it was him, it was Kurt Metzger, the Sklar brothers, a bunch of comics that were up there.
I love the Sklars.
And they bring up Sebastian. I'm like, oh wow, like this is the point where now he's selling out theaters. He's
Right.
At the time I think he was filming The Irishman. He did that one part in The Irishman, and he goes on stage and he's filthy, and I'm like, this is what I'm looking for. It's like, where's this guy? Instead, I hear him talk about the sausage and the peppers and my Italian family. I'm like, he's actually being filthy and funny. I'm like, where's that guy? I want to see you on stage.
Yeah, and he's because he was so anal retentive and so goody goody, and he thought he was better than everybody. That's why I hated him, because he was an asshole. I mean, I don't hate him, but I just thought he was a fucking, an idiot. I'm like, oh, you think you're so cute, you think you're so cool, girl, bye. I'm like, no, bitch, I don't give a fuck. You could do you, but we were like oil and water anyway, so we didn't mix very well.
I was just talking to Earl Skakel on my podcast, and we were talking about
one of my best friends.
Earl's
Earl's
great,
one of my best friends.
Well, and then Brody Stevens, who unfortunately we lost him about 4 years ago.
My baby.
That was a classic example of a comic that can clear a room where the only people laughing. And I remembered being there. I was there several years ago, and I'm in the back row of the Comedy Store in the original room, and Brody's doing his. You got it.
Arms cross negative. You got it. Kettlebells.
Yeah, or the what was it, the something about the back hair clogging up the drain?
Yes.
And he would repeat it. He's like, I'm seeing if anybody's paying attention. Yeah. And it was funny because there was like 3 people in the entire place laughing, and I could tell all 3 of them were comics, including me. And it's just funny how there are some comics that they really are the comics comic.
Brody Stevens was the comic. There's a list. There's Brody Stevens, Brian Holtzman. Holtzman's one of my favorite human beings ever in the entire world. Who else was it? There was another one. There's another comics comic. Like, it's like, watching them, it's just, but those 2 are the one I can think of off the top of my head was watching Brody. How dare you don't do that, and all his kettlebells, you got it, and all his Brodyisms. I'm crying in the back. I loved him so much, and watching Holtzman get angry and just clear like the crowd's killing. Here comes Holtzman and totally destroys the entire vibe in the room. And I remember one night they booked him on Fat Tuesday in the main room. Guy Torrey put him on the main room. So we all, like, I ain't going on stage. I ain't doing shit. If Holtzman's on and Fat Tuesday, I want to see what the fuck happens. He bombed like Syria in there. It was so hilarious because I think he was nervous and he couldn't sell Holtzman. And the crowd turned on him. Black crowds are hilarious. I mean, I grew up in black crowds with Paul Mooney, and just when they turn, it was so hilarious. And I'm dying. I'm in the back crying because he's bombing, but I love him. Like, he's my favorite comedian as a comic. But it's just watching comics are just, it's amazing. And it's so special I miss Brody.
I was talking to Frankie Pace. Do you know who he is?
My godfather.
Yeah, Frank. I was on the phone with him a couple of days ago. We were talking about old Otto and George stories.
Oh my God!
you want to talk about a comic who can clear a room, and the only people left are the comics. That was Otto Petersen with Otto and George, where he'll just go up there like, Pope wrote cunt, and he's doing the JFK assassination bit for the 10,000th time, and he'll offend an audience. He'll make audience members cry.
Yeah.
And yet the only people left are the comics in the back of the room.
Yeah. Did you hear the story about the time George was an audience member was drunk and got in a fight with George and wanted to fight the puppet?
I've heard a couple of these.
And he he couldn't grasp that Otto was the puppeteer. He couldn't grasp that Otto was doing the voice. He thought that puppet real. And it was oh my God. I haven't laughed so hard in my fucking life. This dude was gonna beat up a puppet. He didn't even he couldn't even register that Otto was the guy behind it. It was just so great. He's like, I'm right here. And it's just,
I'm still friends with his girlfriend Trish, and she's
oh
great. And some of those stories of him where like he was a street performer in those
yeah,
days, like
yep,
Charlie, was it Charlie Barnett, I believe his name is,
yep.
and he was in New York. He would play all the ferry boats and stuff, and
Hmm.
he eventually developed his act in the 70s into from being like a regular ventriloquist to being kind of a filthy ventriloquist, and by
Yep.
the 80s he was so in demand. But then he would perform in Central Park, and that was the classic story about where he's just telling all these jokes, and there's a Hispanic guy who comes up and stabs the puppet. Caught a little bit of Otto's hand. He caught Otto's hand, and through George, he says, "This spick stabbed me."
Oh, it's just so classic. Like all the good ones are gone, it seems like. You know what I mean? Like Otto, I forgot. I didn't even think about Otto and George being a comics comic. Like there's another, I don't know if you know, like a lot of the old school East Coast guys. Like, do you know Gemini?
Oh yeah, I've worked with Gemini.
Uh
He's got his
hey,
share of puppets too.
hey, let me show you a trick. You know, I working with Gemini is the first time I worked with him because like it was me, Mark Riccadonna, Richie Byrne,
Yep,
Gemini, like all these
I know
guys.
all of them. Yep.
Those are my brothers. And the first time I worked with Gemini in lockdown, and I haven't laughed so hard on a Zoom show in my entire fucking life than watching Gemini tell a story at his computer. And I'm tears. And I'm like, I need to work because I was, I'm a West Coast girl. So all the old school East Coast people I didn't really get to grow up with. So I met them all in lockdown because we're all in different circuits. And you're muted, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. My
Okay.
cat is howling in the background. It sees
Oh,
another cat, and I'm like, oh Jesus! Of course. As soon as I'm doing a podcast, another cat wants to come up and fuck with my cat.
these are all the cool cats. That's why.
Of course.
So
Yeah, but
we worked together out in Philly, like outside of Philly at this little theater. And I scared the shit out of because me being me, my
mhm.
style. I could get abrasive and I roast and I
Oh
just
yeah.
go in, I go after you. He didn't know what to do. He's like, I'm a little scared of her. She's gonna kick my ass. I don't know what to do. And Mark's dying and he's getting nervous. So I'm trying to get him to play. Like I'm trying to get him to throw it back because I know he can throw it back. The guy is sharp. The guy is so fucking quick on his feet. So I'm trying to play with him, but he doesn't know me and I'm a woman. And he's like an old school Italian. So he's afraid to banter because he doesn't know me. He doesn't know what he can get away with and what's inappropriate. And Mark's dying because I'm drilling at Gemini and Gemini's freaking out and getting nervous and starting to shake. And he's like, Mark, I don't know I don't know what to do. She's scaring me. I can't handle this. And he was like freaking out and he was getting up and walking around and we were dying. And I'm like, you're such a pussy. But then after the show, we bonded instantly. Like we were totally like bonded. But it was just so funny because I love fucking with people like that
Mhm.
don't know, that are old school. And I just start going in on them. And it's for me, it's fun, but I like to test you, like to see if not in a negative way, but like test you to see, because I think it's a respect thing. When you
Oh
can
yeah.
roast each other, that's a real trust and respect. And if you could dish it back to me, I'm your best friend. If you could drag me if you could read me for filth, I am in. I am so right next to you. Bitch, dish it out. I love to be roasted. So,
Well, I mean, that's well, especially when so you were out in California, you go to New York and you see this firsthand. Now you were at the, you remember the Comedy Cellar, the cellar table and everything, the
yep.
Nick DiPaolo's, the Patrice O'Neill's and everything. So you were there
Patrice.
at that time,
Mhm.
which, and it's not the cellar table, as we all know, is not the same anymore.
No. Oh, no, 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 no. It's a lot
But you
different
got
now.
to see a little bit more of that East Coast ball busting when you
Mhm.
ended up moving across the country.
Especially when Patrice was still alive. Like he was the master. And I felt like when I met Patrice, because I was, when I moved here, I was at Caroline's every week with Paul Mooney. So that's where I was. So the one night I finally got to meet Patrice and he was the early show and we were the late show. So we were talking. He goes, who's this white girl? And I said, oh, I opened for Paul Mooney. I'm Christy Miller. I'm from the Comedy Store. And he goes, oh, you work with Mooney? I ain't fucking with you then. And he goes, and he shakes my hand. He goes, you must be funny if Mooney's fucking with you. And I said, I like to think so. And I had mad respect from him at that point. And then him and I sat there and trashed Lisa Lampanelli. And then we were friends. But it's like getting roasted by Patrice. That's when you feel like I've made it. I'm funny. When Patrice roasts you, it's like, it's such a badge of honor. That more than any other comic to me, Patrice was the one was like, that was my badge of honor, getting roasted by him.
I saw him a couple of times. I saw him in 2006 when he was part of the Opie and Anthony universe, and they did a show and everything. And I thought Patrice was really good, but that was the only time I got to see Otto, which was right. You know, and it saw Rich Voss, which I think I've worked with Voss more than any other comic. But when I saw Patrice, he was good. By 2010, when I saw him again, he's doing clubs again. He was otherworldly. It was a religious experience to go see Patrice O'Neal because of how much he had grown through at the early days of doing podcasts, because it wasn't just, you weren't just going to see Patrice on a comedy stage. You had to hear him as a radio guest. You had to hear him as a podcast or a radio host when he was doing some XM radio stuff.
Yep.
There was way more to the Patrice O'Neal universe that people didn't know until, of course, after he died or did the Charlie Sheen roast. Yeah. And it was when I saw him, about a year and a half before he died, he was like, I couldn't believe it. Like standing ovation type of like Sunday early evening crowd giving him a standing ovation. He was that good. He was
a monster. Unstoppable. And the fact that we lost him is just, that's a real loss to the comedy scene, because we lost that voice. We lost that, that powerhouse. And Patrice was pushing boundaries and talking about shit people were afraid of, or people couldn't sell because they couldn't commit the way he committed. Yeah. And to watch people get upset with him was the funniest thing ever. Like when he would go after these whores and shit and they would get really mad at him, I would be dying laughing, but he didn't give a fuck. And he's like the true, working with Paul Mooney, that's a whole nother level. But watching, at our level and, at our generation, watching someone like Patrice just like power through and people hating him and people not wanting to book him and people shunning him and not giving him spots and telling him he's too rough for the room. Cause I get told the same shit by a lot of clubs. Yeah. When I left Paul Mooney, they were like, oh, you opened for Paul Mooney? Yeah, you're probably too rough for our room. And I'm like, you didn't even watch me yet. Yeah. So, a lot of they want a Christy Miller. They want a Patrice O'Neal, but they don't want Christy Miller and Patrice O'Neal. They want somebody kind of like them. Yeah. It's like, we want, so it was like, we don't want Bill Hicks. We want Dennis Leary. We want somebody who's kind of like you, who takes, we want a copycat. Concepts. Yeah. We want a copycat who can't sell who you really are, so it's just like, I went through a lot of problems with that stuff and being the way I am. So I just said, you know what? Fuck everybody. I'm just going to pave through what I do. I got the record deal just out of COVID and on my own merit, thanks to Mark Riccadonna. He passed a clip of me to a record company that he works with, and she loved him. Like her and her husband that own the record company, it's Realize Records. Her husband goes, I don't give a fuck what we're working on. I want to produce this album and see what this girl's going to say next. And to me, when you say that, that is the biggest honor, because it shows that you see what I'm about, like what I'm about. And, my comedy is just ridiculous. I say things in people's inside voices, and I say it because it sounds so ridiculous. Like, do you hear what we're all upset about? Do you hear what the controversy, like, this is so dumb. We're all idiots for worrying about stupid shit like this. And I'm like an inside voice telling that you're afraid to say, so I say it for you. And here's the line. I'm going to intentionally jump over it. Yes. So, I'm like, so I got to ask you, because there it is, Brutally Yours. If you're watching on the YouTube or Rumble right now, but go check it out. I would assume where can we find that, by the way? iTunes, Apple Music, Spotify, Tidal, Amazon Music, anywhere you stream your music, it will be there.
Go buy it. Go buy it. Don't just listen to it. Go buy it. Support your artists, support Patreon, and support all that kind of stuff. It's,
Yes.
there's a lot of people in the audience that they do, as much as things have become very homogenized, people do like to support the arts and everything. And
Oh,
when
yeah.
people are really going out there.
People ask me because of my style of comedy. My first question I always hear is, aren't you afraid of getting canceled? And I'm like, no, because I'm not attacking anybody. I come from a place of love, and I call a spade, and I throw myself under the bus just as fast, if not faster. And the beauty of doing this album was in the audience, I had, and the engineer brought this up. He goes, I cannot believe what a wide array of communities in your audience. You have trans men and women, because I have trans men and women love me because I speak for, I stand by their side and support them. I don't speak for them or tell them what to do. I just stand by and support. I don't give a shit. If it makes you happy, I want you to be happy. And whatever it is, you be happy. I got you. And then I had just my regular gays. And then I had twinks. And then I had my blacks. I had my gangster blacks. And I had my MAGA Staten Islanders. I had my waspy liberal Connecticut's. And then I had all my comedians in the back. And it was just nice to see all these different demographics in one room, laughing at the same jokes at the same time, having a good time together. And I'm like, this is what this is about. This is what comedy will save the world. Comedy will save, and we always do. And to vilify stand-up comedy, or even to vilify drag queens, like, why don't we let's get the problems at hand? That, like, you're displacing your bullshit. Let's take accountability for our crap and handle the real problems in this country. We're all a family in this country. We're a big country. We're a diverse country, and it's beautiful having all these different faces and all these different types of people, and we're all the same. So let's just get together and just stop fighting and start uniting and start blowing this shit up and taking care of each other. But first thing to do, you got to start laughing at yourself.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's one thing when it comes to writing material, that everything's been so serious lately with politics and social issues and everything. It's like, all right. But then also at the same time, you got to find the funniest thing. And then when I see a lot of comics, they're like, oh boy, that's going to offend somebody. It's like, well, as soon as you start putting it through that filter, then it stops becoming funny. You start peeling away the potential funny. If you, like you said, you worked in front of how many black audiences? Are you going to sit there and tame your material? No, nope. They actually will really give it up for you if you are funny. If you're going to go up there, like, I love working in front of black audiences.
If you're real and you are unapologetically you on that stage, and you commit to your material, and you don't give a fuck, and you're as real as you can get, you can sell anything. The crowd is going to go with you because they smell weakness. They're like piranhas. They can smell blood in the water. And if you have any hesitation, like, oh, this might offend somebody, they're going to smell that, and they're going to destroy you. That's why. And if you don't have a fear, and if you just don't give a shit, and you don't there's no anger behind it. There's no bitterness. There's no resentment. There's no, defense knee-jerk reaction to a certain demographic that you're going after or talking about, or whatever it is that the joke's about. It's going to sell if it comes from love, ball-busting, lighthearted silliness. And a lot of people go up, they're very angry, they have a chip on their shoulder. Well, I see all these other comics making it, and fucking I'm better than they are. You hear this all the time, You're like, I'm funnier than them. How did he get that? Fuck that guy. And they get that, and they carry that anger. It's like a cancer, and they carry it with them, and then it starts seeping out on stage, and then they start tanking. After a while, they don't write new material. They don't stay with the times. They don't stay current. They just stay bitter in their little box, and just with all the whataboutisms. So what about me? What about my shit? What about this? Shut up and just be funny, you fucking asshole. God damn. I'm going to open a comedy club called Nobody Cares. Be funny.
Exactly. Book me. At least let me do a guest set.
I'm 100%. Come on in. You're in, honey.
So last thing I want to ask you, we'll wrap it up in a couple of minutes here. So the fitness aspect,
yes.
which, you know, I see a lot of comics that, you know, you don't even have to go Ralphie May or John Panette, but there's, you know, comics are like, they focus on their material. You don't see a lot of them are like, yeah, I'm in the gym. I'm working on my macros right now. It's like, no, comics are sitting there smoking weed and, you know,
Freaking
eating at a
out.
diner at 3:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
You're kind of
Pounding
the
drinks.
opposite. You've been
Yeah.
somebody you're definitely in the gym. You're a power lifter. As you said before we got on, you were deadlifting Gino Bisconti.
Yeah, I squatted Gino and I squatted Gavin at Compound Media. I did that for Aaron Berg.
Well, yes, of
Yeah,
course.
you gotta make Aaron laugh. You know, we love, after I roasted him that day and made him feel bad about himself, I had to like redeem myself and make him laugh. So
I will say it was a badge of honor for me a couple of times. Aaron complimented me on my physique one time. We were at a cigar shop. And then when I worked with him and Louis J. Gomez a couple of months ago, we went to a powerlifting gym and he's like,
sexy.
wow. And like Louis comes up to me, he's like, Doggy, you're in really good shape. I'm like, thanks, I appreciate that. And like I was keeping up with them. I was happy about it. But obviously Aaron, who's 5'2" or whatever he is, but
him and
like
Brad Williams. He's Brad Williams stunt double.
But he's built like a brick shit house, and he does watch himself. He's sober now and everything, but you know, you don't see.
I love my Berg. I love him.
But a lot of comics they're not in the gym. I don't know if it takes away from their potential material or whatever the case is. But
I think that it's just pure laziness. It's also all the weed and alcohol. It's the late hours, and they just don't. They're like, fuck it. I'm a comic. I don't have to lift weights. I'm like, okay, well, I'm a comic too, and I don't have to either, but I want to. That's my zen. That's where I work out material in my head. I get stress out. I'm happy. I'm empowered. And there's times, one night I was doing a heavy deadlift program. Ed Cohn, I do his 10-week program when I want to get my deadlift up 20, 30 pounds in 10 weeks. And for those who don't know Ed Cohn, he's probably one of the greatest powerlifters of all time. The guy's like this big and deadlifted like 1,000, was 1,100 pounds or 1,000 pounds, I forget. But his deadlift program is brutal. So I'm in the middle of this program and I'm towards the end, and this program will wipe you. You can't do anything else the rest of the week. It's so brutal. And I remember in the middle of that program, I was booked to headline this show. It was here. It was at Broadway Comedy Club, but it was in the Red Room. And that's not even, this is me being weak. This is coming back because I hadn't lifted 300 pounds for forever. And it felt so good to pull that off the floor again. But I used to do that for reps. Isn't that sad? I used to rep the shit out of this. I would do 5 sets of 5 and not even be sweaty. And I was going for 405 beltless and wrapless. I always curtsy after my lifts. That's my thing. But whatchamacallit, so I was so zapped, but I found lifting weights and then going and headlining, it just totally aligns everything in my brain and everything just comes out smooth. Like I'm totally in my body and I feel empowered and just wreck the room, just fucking destroy it. Because it's like, if I don't lift, I can't sleep. And I can't, it's my zen. That's my weed, I guess. It's my drug of choice.
It's wonderful. And I noticed that too, because when I would do more stuff on the road, I would always find a gym, you know, I would go to Planet Shitness or whatever. Whatever in that area, but I would need to find a gym to go to, and I really enjoyed doing that. And you know, whether I'm doing cardio or lifting before a set, but it does kind of clear some stuff. And I realize, you know, because a lot of comics they'll get drunk, they'll smoke a bunch of weed, and they'll start writing material. For me, it's like I think I've written half my material either on a treadmill or on a bench press in between sets.
Oh yeah, I've written half my material deadlifting, squatting, or benching, like whatever, when I'm in the gym, because then I'm in my zone and I'm all isolated. My earphones are on and I'm isolated from the world because I don't like lifting with people. The only person I really like lifting with is Ellen Stein, the 70-year-old power lifter that I don't know if I told you about. Did I mention that? I've done so many podcasts. Well, one of my best friends, she's a world champion powerlifter. She still competes to this day. She just competed a week and a half ago at the XPC in Ohio. She's 70 years old, 5 feet tall, 130 pounds. She squatted 400. She pulled 435 and she benched 210. She missed her third bench attempt, but she still pulled over 1,000 pounds. She's 70.
70. Well,
70. And
we
she
have
doesn't
really
look it.
shitty diets in
Mhm.
nowadays. That's one of the problems is that it's like, hey, it's like I need a pre-workout meal. Well, McDonald's has 2 McDoubles for $5. I guess I'll
Oh,
go there. It's like, yeah, that's really going to help you. And
yeah,
especially when you're on your way home and Panda Express and Chipotle are right next to your gym.
exactly. Well, it's like, and being on the road, it's really hard to maintain your program. Like, I go to Nashville on a regular basis. So where I
Oh
stay in
gosh.
Yeah. Well, the food is terrifying. Um, so because I stay at my friend Kelly's house. She used to be a waitress at the Comedy Store back in the 90s when I started. So we've been friends ever since. But she lives out there now. So she lives in Bellevue, and down the street, like a 5-minute drive and like a 75-day walk, is a Gold's Gym. So they know me in there, so I go there frequently. And so when I go out there for shows, I stay with Kelly, and I'm like, the drill, bitch, get up, take me to the gym. I got
Yeah.
to go lift weights. But it's the only time on the road that I'm really at a good gym where I can actually keep up with my program. Otherwise, hotel gyms suck. They're
Oh God.
terrifying.
Yeah.
It's all bullshit stuff. Or you're like, okay, or if I know I'm not going to be at a gym, I bring my TRX and I bring some bands, and I'm like, this is gay. Does anybody have a car I can push? And anybody got a
Although I'm happy for them because when I do see people in there, like I don't judge. Look, if you're on a treadmill, I don't care if you're watching like the final season of Succession on your iPad while you're on a treadmill. At least you're there. Like I don't judge with that, but for me personally, if I'm at a gym and it's a treadmill, it's an elliptical, and you have dumbbells that go up to about 25 pounds, I'm like, I'm not really getting much out of this one today.
Yeah. Yeah, and I've been to gyms like that, the hotel gyms, and one time I went to Nashville, Raylan Nelson, Willie Nelson's granddaughter,
Mhm.
she's got a band, but she hires me sometimes for private shows and stuff that she's doing. She'll hire me, so she'll fly me out in the hotels. There's like some what is it, a Peloton treadmill, and I'm like, first of all, those 2 words are disgusting to me. Go fuck yourself. And I'm like, can I lift this? Do you mind if I move this treadmill across the room? Is that cool? I need something heavy. And they had the heaviest dumbbells they had were 25. So I was doing squat presses for like 100 reps going, okay, let me just do this until I drop dead, because there's no room in this gym. And there was some other idiot that worked there that was working out. And I'm like in this little tiny space. I'm like, okay, well, I guess it's squat press. That's it. Fuck it. I don't even care. And it was just it's so funny. Like, it's so hard on the road to maintain when you're a lifter to
Yeah.
stay on your program. So that fucks me up a lot too.
I think if
But
you're a lifter, if you're somebody who just does cardio and you can
you can do
knock
that
off
anywhere.
10 miles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just
doesn't
throw
matter.
jump rope in my bag.
That's why they're like where I am, not far out of Akron. Aaron Berg loves this gym. Every time he comes to town, I think the only reason he books coming to my area is that there's this
There's a
great
gym.
bodybuilders gym.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So
I love working towns that have a great gym. I'm like, where's the gym? Like, if I get booked, I'm like, all right, is there a gym within like a 10-minute walk or 15-minute walk? I'm good. I don't care. I don't need a car. I'll just walk. I don't give a shit. I'm a New Yorker. That's what we do. And
Yeah.
so if there's a good gym, or I'll have to find the gym and then find someone to take me every day. But other than that, I get excited when I'm booked in a city that has a killer gym close by, and then I get excited. It's sad,
Well,
but I do.
Yeah, the bodybuilders gym in Akron. Maybe we'll have to get you at the Funny Stop.
Yes, let's do it.
I'll talk to Pete. We'll get you in there.
Talk to Pete, give him my album. Let's do it, and do the show with me.
Wait, what album is that? As I share the screen. There it is. I was trying to stall and I fucked myself up there.
No worries.
Brutally Yours, Christy Miller there.
Yes, it's Brutally Yours. You can get it on Apple Music, iTunes, Spotify, Amazon Music, Tidal, anywhere you stream or buy your music.
That's fantastic. Well, hey, Christy, thanks so much for doing the podcast here.
Thank you, honey.
Let's push the album. Any other plugs? Where can we find you on social media? Do you have a podcast or anything like that?
Yes, you can find me at Christy Miller Comedy on all the socials and YouTube. Follow me there. You can follow my new podcast, which you'll have to do. It's Old School, New School Comedy Podcast. So I'm the old school. Aaliyah Janine is new school.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know Aaliyah Janine?
Yeah, she's the reformed porn star.
Yes, she's been overhauled. I love her, and she's hilarious. So she's my co-host. So we have bookers, producers, managers, brand new open mic comics to old school, like comics like Rob Bartlett have done the show. Do you know Rob Bartlett?
I know Rob. Yep.
Yeah, he's fucking hilarious. And then I had this new girl that I've never heard of named Rebecca Reingold. She was adorable, only a year and a half in, just getting her experience being a newbie. And then we've had Gina Savage, the manager of the Comedy Cellar, on the show. And she's been a booker and a manager for 25 years in New York City. And then we had Mark Riccadonna on this last week, which was a fun episode. And Berg's going to come on. We just got to work with his schedule because he can't do Sundays, and that's when we record. So Berg, you fucking asshole, give me your schedule. And yeah, so you can follow us at oldschool.newschool.podcast on Instagram. And if you love me, follow me at Christy Miller Comedy. If you hated me, I'm Kathy Griffin.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing you in New York, or if I can get you over to my neck of the woods at a great comedy club. I know Berg loves going to the Funny Stop, so there's a lot of people.
Yeah, Riccadonna does too. He loves the Funny Stop.
Yeah, him and Don Jameson, they do like the Heaven and Hell tour.
Yes, they do. And Riccadonna and I do the Naughty and Nice tour.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, Mark's a great guy.
Oh, he's amazing. Yeah, let's talk about Funny Stop and do the show with me. I would love that.
I would love that too. Yeah, let's talk off the air. But yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks again for coming on. And
honey, thank you for having me. Thank you so much. You're amazing. You guys follow him. Buy his Patreon, you fucking cheap bastards.
That's right. Otherwise, I need to do more open mics, I guess, to try to get back.
Otherwise, I will come and squat you and drop you out the fucking window. All right.
Yeah, otherwise, I'm gonna. All right. Thanks, everybody, for listening to the Check Your Brain podcast. My name is Tony Mazur. If you liked what you heard, I've got more. It's on Patreon at patreon.com/Tony Mazur. Go check that out for as little as $3 a month, $3, $5, and $10 tiers. If not, every Wednesday, this podcast goes out for free, or you could check out my YouTube or Rumble pages. Thanks, everybody, for listening to the Check Your Brain podcast. We'll be back with more content for you for free next Wednesday. If not, if you want to subscribe, you'll have some more tomorrow. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Bye now.